Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. We're closer now than we've ever been. Those are the words of Donald Trump on Monday as U.S., Ukrainian and European officials wrapped up intensive peace talks in Berlin. They claim have resolved 90% of the issues. Now, President Volodymyr Zelensky, however, warned that territorial questions remain very painful, even as the prospect of NATO-style security guarantees are put on the table. Joining us now to discuss what happened in Berlin and what may be next is Rudik, Ukrainian member of parliament and leader of the Voice Party. Good to have you back on TVP World, Kira. So when we hear this statement, I mean, there's a lot that I want to ask you, but if that statement from President Trump that we are closer to peace than we've ever been, from your perspective, from Kiev's perspective, how do you see that? Do you agree? Do you see this as a breakthrough?
Good morning, Sasha, and thank you so much for having me. We will believe it when we see it, and as of right now, we haven't seen any steps from Russia that would confirm President Trump's statement. So Russia continues attacking us, continues attacking our energy infrastructure, and continues pushing us at the battlefield. We have warned everyone that these sort of negotiations could be Russia's trick to escape sanctions that President Trump promised to enforce and continue their winter campaign. So this is exactly what they're doing. And so we appreciate the United States involvement and all our European allies figuring out how to move forward and all the matters about the security guarantees and everything else. However, it remains unclear what would Russia's position be and if they are ready for peace. From what we see, they are not. However, this proposal for a ceasefire on Christmas, I think, is a very good test of the water to see if they will agree to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also German Chancellor said that as well on Monday, that this is now in Russia's court, that peace or whatever that may be, ceasefire, that's in Russia's court. Now, I also want to ask you, because President Zelensky said as well that the territorial issues must be settled, what he's saying, fairly. So what does fair mean here in concrete terms for Ukraine?
Fairly is that we are a sovereign state, we didn't do anything wrong, and we are not accepting that the lands were taken from us, and of course we are not giving up on any other territories that Russia wants. I think this is what is called fair according to justness and the international law. So I believe this was President's position, and of course this is not something that Russia would agree to, and of course this is something that obviously President Trump envoys are pushing against.
Mm-hmm. And also these security guarantees, I mean, we're still scant on exactly what that means. This is something that's supposed to be similar to NATO's Article 5. Do you sense that they're going to be enforceable? I mean, we're still some way off here, but when you hear that and what they talked about yesterday, how do you see these security guarantees working out?
So first and foremost, though President Zelensky said that he may step away from Ukraine's NATO membership, I want to make it very clear that it's not up to one person to decide. We have our NATO membership aim written in our constitution as the will of Ukrainian people, and it cannot be just changed overnight and traded off. But of course, the most important thing right now is the security guarantees, and they need to be enforceable within our partners. So first, we need to read into what these security guarantees are offered. We didn't hear that just yet. Second, they need to be ratified by the parliaments of the countries that confirm to that. Third, the security guarantees need to be included into some defense plan for Ukraine in supporting Ukraine's army and military production, and then the financing for all of that. And then how to finance it, I believe that the unfreezing of Russian assets and using them for this is a fair and legit thing to do right now, and this is what we hear was negotiated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those Russian assets, that's going to be very, very much talked about over the next few days, especially as the European leaders come together. But also speaking about European leaders, one of the things that they decided on yesterday, or at least in the statements, was this multinational force I mean, we've been down this road before. We've heard some kind of talk of peacekeeping troops, this multinational. How is this, in your mind, any different? Can you see this as workable? How do Ukrainians perceive this multinational force in actual concrete terms?
So we have an incredibly long front line with Russia, more than 1,300 kilometers. And so it needs to be a substantial force between Russia and Ukraine with the understanding what would happen if, God forbid, one of the soldiers of these forces will be killed by, let's say, a Russian drone. What would happen next? Before you clearly understand how you will go ahead, you shouldn't be bringing anyone into harm's way. And we do not have a clear answers right now. We do not have an answer on the amount of those people, on the soldiers, of the rules that they will be working with, and on how they will be distributed across the front line. But we are talking about step 2, but not about the step 1. Where would be the line of demarcation? So would Russia stop where they are right now? Would they go back 10, 15 kilometers, same way as Ukraine is asked to do? So these are the questions that we are still very much looking forward to have an answer, because that would then imply the questions about peacekeeping troops, etc., etc. Plus, we didn't hear, as of right now, which countries really agreed to the peacekeeping troops, and they are there not only with the political statements, but with real actions ready to bring troops here into Ukraine, especially, Sasha, that the war has really changed since the time that the peacekeeping troops were used before. Mm-hmm. And that it will be very important to change how this... Sorry, my cat is meowing. It will be very important to see how things will change right now, and how to make sure, again, we do not want anyone to suffer as we are suffering, and we want it to be a really collective effort, but that will be actually executable and workable.
Yeah, and also speaking of how things are changing, I mean, we're hearing these statements, they're all very positive from yesterday. I think one U.S. official said that 90% of the issues are solved. I mean, that leaves 10%. So I'm thinking about what is that 10% still. We're also hearing that there will be more talks between the Ukrainians and the Americans, apparently somewhere in the United States, likely somewhere in Florida. So what do you expect out of those talks? Will this 10% be settled on the weekend, you think?
I do not believe that the complicated things can be settled really quickly, especially we assume that those 10% is, of course, territorial question. We do not know just yet what Russia's reaction would be, because it's very good that the United States, European leaders, and Ukraine has a mutual understanding. But again, none of us is an aggressor. And we should be very mindful about having those promises and giving them to people, raising up their hopes, when there is no actual way on pressuring Russia, even right now, into going ahead and agreeing to this deal. So I hope that the leaders of Europe and the United States are ready to pressure Russia. But we didn't see any of that happening beforehand. So how is this time different? Ukraine was never a problem in this war. And right now, it seems it's still a plan of appeasing, satisfying an aggressor with certain compromises by Ukrainian side, and then hoping that Putin would not attack us again.
Right. And I also want to ask you, I mean, it's a question we often talk about, what could be next. But I mean, also what President Zelensky said yesterday after the Berlin meeting, he said very much that Ukraine will never recognize the Donbass as Russian. With that in play here, what comes next? What if the Russians reject this? Where are we by the end of next week in your mind?
So if Russia rejects it, as well as they reject the Christmas ceasefire, then eyes will be on the White House and on President Trump, whose idea was that the negotiations can actually bring the war to an end, into pushing and imposing the sanctions as he promised to do. Then the eyes will be on our partners, who need to stop buying Russian gas and oil. There has been enough time to get away from it. Then the eyes will be again on Ukraine, because we are right now, Sasha, I'm again talking to you on diesel generator. Situation with electricity here is really, really bad. And so again, when the military are calling and asking, so what are those negotiations about? I say the good guys prepare the mutual position. However, there is no word from the bad guys. And this is exactly what's happening. So the alternative to this diplomatic solution would still be a military solution. And for that, we need EU and United Kingdom and Americans to change their strategy into putting more pressure on Russia and giving more support to Ukraine.
Right. So we've had obviously unprecedented level of meetings in those last 24 hours. And you said we'll have to now wait and see what Moscow will say. Look, always a pleasure speaking with you. Stay safe. Thank you so much, Rudik, there, Ukrainian MP from the Voice Party.
Thank you, Sasha.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks. But stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.